Welcome to this explainer. You know, if you follow personal finance at all, you've probably hit this ultimate paradox, right? The harder you try to meticulously track every single penny, the more absolutely exhausting it becomes. Well, today, we're cutting right through all that noise with a super frictionless framework. We're going to tackle what might literally be the most pressing money problem we all face, how to actually manage your money and cure that systemic budget fatigue without, completely losing your mind.
But before we jump straight into the solution, let's take a step back and diagnose the actual problem. Like, why do most budgets fail? Honestly, it's this frustrating cyclical trap for so many of us. Think about it. You get super motivated, you download some highly rated app, you create 45 color-coded subcategories, and suddenly you're spending your entire Sunday afternoon debating whether a heavily scented candle counts as groceries or home goods, right? That isn't budgeting, that's practically a second job. And what happens next? Total system burnout. Complex systems demand perfection. And because real life is just inherently chaotic, those rigid budgets usually end up abandoned in a drawer by February.
But here's the good news. Personal finance is actually highly solvable once you just slightly shift your paradigm. On one hand, you have traditional high-friction budgeting. The endless spreadsheets, the receipt tracking, and that constant low-level anxiety that you're somehow doing it all wrong. Now, contrast that with the 50-30-20 rule. It's an intuitive, macro-level approach. It shifts your focus entirely away from micromanaging a $3 coffee purchase so you can finally step back and manage the big picture of your financial life.
So, instead of dozens of stressful little categories to keep track of, your entire financial ecosystem gets distilled down into just 3 slices. A 50% slice, a 30% slice, and a 20% slice. And that's it. That is the whole shebang. It gives you this strategic bird's-eye view, making sure your hard-earned income is balanced perfectly between your current obligations, your desired lifestyle, and your future freedom. No more, no less. So let's break down exactly how you can run this diagnostic on your own money right now.
Okay, we're going to start with the foundation, the 50. According to this rule, exactly half of your after-tax income goes strictly toward your needs. This is your baseline. Exactly 50% of your money is dedicated to just keeping your life running safely and securely. But if we want to make this diagnostic tool actually work and solve problems, we have to be absolutely ruthless about our definitions here.
When we say needs, we mean strictly the essential expenses required to survive and function. We are talking about the absolute non-negotiables, your rent or mortgage, basic utility bills, essential groceries, and yes, I mean actual basic sustenance here, not the premium imported artisanal cheese, basic transportation to get to work, and minimum loan payments. Mastering this 50% benchmark is basically your ultimate diagnostic test. Look, if these fixed costs are devouring 70 or 80% of your income, no amount of skipping your morning lattes is going to save you. You've got a structural problem that needs a bigger solution. And that's exactly why having this 50% limit acts as such an incredible eye-opening alarm bell.
All right, let's move on to the next piece. And this is exactly where traditional, super austere budgets completely fall apart. The 30. 30% of your income is explicitly allocated for your wants. Yep, you heard that correctly. Almost a third of your money is explicitly, intentionally supposed to go towards things you simply enjoy.
We define wants as non-essential lifestyle choices and personal upgrades. This is your dining out, your premium streaming subscriptions, concert tickets, a fresh pair of shoes, or maybe that high-end gym membership. The absolute genius of the 50-30-20 rule is entirely psychological. It doesn't restrict fun. Traditional budgets fail because they act like financial crash diets where you're just never allowed to enjoy a carb again, right? And that inevitably leads to binge spending. By actively budgeting for guilt-free spending, you create realistic flexibility, and that is what makes your wealth building sustainable year after year.
Which brings us to the final, and I'd argue the most powerful number in the sequence, 20. The last 20% of your income is reserved exclusively for savings and debt payoff. Now, it might be the smallest slice of the pie, but do not let its size fool you for a second. This is the slice that completely alters your financial trajectory from the present directly into the future.
So the crucial point here is that this 20% is exactly how you secure your future and crush your past debt. It's deployed to build your emergency runway, invest in compounding assets like your retirement accounts, or aggressively eliminate toxic high-interest debt. Think of it this way. If the 50 keeps you alive and the 30 keeps you sane, the 20 is the engine of your financial independence. Consistently dedicating a fifth of your income here is practically a mathematical guarantee for long-term wealth accumulation.
So how do we actually operationalize this to solve real budget fatigue? Well, you can start with 3 streamlined steps today. Step 1, calculate your true after-tax income. Look at what actually hits your bank account, not your gross salary. Step 2, categorize last month's spending into just these 3 macro buckets: needs, wants, and savings or debt. Seriously, don't overcomplicate it. And step 3, run the diagnostic. If your needs are sitting at, say, 60%, well, you now have clear data. You know you've got to temporarily compress your wants to compensate until you can negotiate down those fixed living costs. It's a dynamic system, and it puts you firmly back in the driver's seat.
Now, as you start implementing this, just watch out for a few common friction points. First up, rationalizing wants into needs. Yes, having high-speed internet for a remote job is absolutely a need, but upgrading to the ultimate fiber optic gaming tier, yeah, that's a want. You've got to be honest with yourself. Second, forgetting irregular expenses. Things like annual insurance premiums or sneaky holiday shopping shouldn't create a total crisis. Just factor a prorated amount into your monthly averages to cover them throughout the year. And finally, using pre-tax income. Always base your numbers on what actually lands in your checking account. Otherwise, you're literally just budgeting phantom money. Avoid these traps and your system will run on absolute autopilot.
Ultimately, solving this whole personal finance puzzle comes down to one really powerful idea. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. You don't need to be some Wall Street analyst, and you definitely don't need overwhelming, heavily color-coded spreadsheets. Trading all that anxiety for a straightforward macro-level ratio is the genuine secret to actually sticking to a financial plan. It gives you financial boundaries, but without building a financial prison.
Which leaves us with one critical question for you to answer right now. What is the very first expense you need to recategorize today? Think about that one sneaky digital subscription, that daily habit, or that bill you've been aggressively defending as a need that you know deep down is actually a want. I challenge you to open your banking app right now, view your numbers through the 50-30-20 lens, and reclaim your money. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Now go out there and take control of that ratio.